adjourn executive session and resume the regular public hearing, application via 2025-001.
So moved.
Second motion.
Commissioner Hess?
Yes.
Commissioner Searle?
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez?
Yes, thank you, and I want to thank all of you for your patience and your diligence in coming before this Board of County Commissioners. I can tell you that information like this is very, very paramount to the job that we do, and a lot of thought process has gone through this process. I want to thank all of Planning Commission and all of you for appearing before us today. And Mr. Commissioner Lucero has made a comment, since he's the one that started the project and the process way back then, he will be recusing himself from casting the vote today. So I will, as the chair of the Board of County Commissioners, I will step down from that particular perspective, and I'm going to make a motion. Given the information and the testimony that was presented to us today, I am going to be making a motion to deny the request as it stands.
Second motion.
Commissioner Hess?
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez?
Yes, and I want to thank you all. So this public hearing is adjourned. It is now 11:05, and I will now entertain a motion to enter right back into the regular Board of County Commissioners.
So moved. Second.
Commissioner Searle?
Yes.
Commissioner Hess?
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez?
Yes, thank you. Let me invite Commissioner Messner once again. We were in the middle of a presentation by the ECMC study results with Commissioner John Messner and Environmental Unit Staff Member Rick Allison, along with Mr. Chris here for the results of water and methane seepage.
That's right.
Thank you, sir.
You bet.
And thank you for your patience again.
Of course.
You will find a good place to go have a good lunch today.
Sounds good. This is the place to be for that. So it'll take Rick just a second to pull up the PowerPoint again, and then we'll get going. So you guys came out of executive session too fast.
Yeah, sorry, I had turned off to save the battery.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, while he's getting that up, did you guys have any questions that you wanted to ask before we get a little further along into the presentation? He's on a state computer, so he takes one.
You know, the water, I think Commissioner has made a very good point, that not because there's a cluster of produced wells or streams that flow into the same tributary, that indeed is going to be that they're all going to be one producers of, whether it is calcium, whether it is fluoride, whatever the case may be. I like the analysis that you're providing, and going back to the conversation that we had, the historically, and Mr. Sanchez will probably not to put him on the spot, but long ago, for dust mitigation purposes, the San Luis County partnership with the private landowners, we would use some of the produced water for dust mitigation purposes. So I guess, and we get some of the water producers. What happened? Why can't we not use it any longer on the county roads? Because at the end of the day, it's a service that we used to provide in the dusty months And so that always helped that. And so as you go through the process, if there is any water that is capable of being disseminated on the county roads and or for any other vegetative purposes, I think that would be very much appreciated for us to be able to continue to utilize.
Okay. Yeah, we'll talk about that at the very end, kind of different options that may be available. Just to remind folks that when we did the mission change rulemaking, so this 2020, as part of implementation of Senate Bill 19-181, there was an exemption that was built in for Los Animas and Huerfano County associated with pits that still allowed for the utilization of the existing pits that, as long as they were built before May 1st, 2011. And so the pits that are out there right now have that exemption that allows that produced water to be placed into those pits without fencing. And right now gives that landowner the ability to access those pits at will for livestock. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end as well. But that's kind of the lay of the land right now.
So 2011 was when that was, if they were built before.
They were built before May 1st, 2011, I think.
I could pick up where I left off to say,
Go ahead.
okay. We were going through these cluster maps. I discussed the fluoride result and the barium result. Okay, so one thing to maybe just revisit, we'll back up to the sodium and chloride. Those were that sort of general salinity and the sodium and chloride. Those are the parameters that really are focused in the central part of the basin, and the concentrations of those are lower in other parts of the basin. When we look at fluoride results, that is a more widespread detection of elevated levels of fluoride relative to these two standards I talked about. So there is a difference depending on some of these compounds, and some of them are really geographically focused, some of them are more widespread. The barium results are kind of a mix between the two in terms of geographic spread. And the main point here is, if you look at that box plot on the right, it represents a majority of the water does have barium concentration that does meet a drinking water standard or the protection of groundwater standards that we enforce. But there's about a quarter of those samples that do exceed it. So it's important to know where those samples are and how often they occur. This slide represents the overall compounds we detected that exceeded some sort of standard when we're comparing it to the drinking water standards. And so the box on the left are those compounds that have health-based standards. I've talked about fluoride and barium, and so you can see that fluoride exceeds the health-based standard in nearly 50% of the samples, whereas barium is approaching about that 20% level that I pointed out. Concentrations of radium and benzene, you'll see occur at an elevated level in less than 5% of the samples. So they don't occur very often, but those compounds in particular, it's important to know where you do have them exceeding those standards, just because of their potential toxicity. So any sort of plan would want to continue to understand whether or not those were in the water. On the right-hand side, these are more general water quality standards. And so this is where things like sodium chloride will land, as well as the iron. The iron in the water is quite high, and we would want to evaluate the iron for potential, just kind of overall potential impact on water quality in any reuse plant. I had mentioned earlier that we analyzed the samples for those PFAS compounds, known as the forever chemicals. The state began regulating PFAS in around 2020 and kind of revised the PFAS action plan for the state in 2024. And basically, any consideration of reuse, we're going to want to be looking for this as a potential contaminant, mainly, not because it's necessarily was certain to have been used in oil and gas, but it was used in so many industries, including the oil and gas industry, that we've got to be, take a cautionary approach with it. The takeaway here is that we did find some trace levels of 2 of those PFAS compounds in the waters in 6 of our 24 samples. These were all detected at concentrations below the EPA's drinking water standard that they set for PFAS. My takeaway from this is, it's something that if we were to look at using this for any of the reuses we're going to go through here with livestock and wildlife watering, dust suppression, or irrigation water, we would want to continue to look at those specific waters proposed and just make sure that they're going to be, if that it's either not detected or if it is detected, it's below these levels, so that we're not creating a new problem. So now we have a series of slides where we try to evaluate potential reuses. The first one being used for livestock watering. We developed this matrix. It's kind of broken really into 4 big chunks, but we'll start with the big left-hand side, which would be evaluating the water. Does it have the potential to cause a severe acute reaction in an animal? And we were able to find literature on cattle and buffalo, horses, poultry, swine, and sheep and goats, and really only for a limited number of parameters. So we have a list of parameters in this table, and if the box is blank, we did not find recommended guidelines in the literature one way or the other for that compound. If we have a green box, those samples represent that the water had a lower concentration of that compound than the literature recommended. And if it's got a red box, it has higher concentrations.
Was it just one sample, or?
This is an attempt to represent the entire data set. And so the way we did that is we looked at the median value of that water data set, and we looked to see or the maximum values. So overall, how does the water look? And then, but is there a chance in some of the unique waters, maybe in that cluster, that you do have incidents? So, again, barium, you're going to hear a theme in these next couple slides. We've already mentioned that. Barium, fluoride, sodium, and sometimes chloride are potentially problematic. The water overall does not have an indication that it's got going to cause a mortal severe reaction in an animal that drinks it based on the average value of water. But there were at least some samples that had a barium, sodium, or fluoride concentration detected that could be the case.
And we can readily identify those?
Probably the best way to do that is, we could do some data sorting, but again, and I'll show this at the end, like a landowner can look and see which wells we have samples for by going to our map, and they can look at the data for the water on their property. So we'll show that, and definitely want to hear feedback about maybe better ways to communicate that. The right-hand side is more of the chronic problems, so growth or reproductive problems, lactation problems that might occur. And again, the water overall does not appear to be problematic, but again, barium, sodium, chloride, and fluoride concentrations may occur at levels that could cause, a variety of these health effects. The other thing I want to point out about the numbers we used is There are literature-based recommendations based on academic studies that various universities or research consortia have put together. They're not regulatory standards like a drinking water standard set by EPA or a groundwater standard set by Water Quality Control Commission here in the state.
So there's remedies, what you're saying is there are remedies for some of those. For instance, like could you put those in a tank and let it set, air it out, and then, I don't know, use it then? Because sometimes those minerals and whatever will dissipate.
There are treatment options depending on the compound. There are certainly treatment options where you can precipitate out barium. We can talk a little bit about kind of what that would look like from a regulatory standpoint, how ECMC might regulate that kind of activity.
So it's going to require filtering or
Well,
further treatment.
yeah, it is a treatment.
I just hate to see it plunked into a hole. It costs $1 million to drill the hole, to re-inject it back down there, and it's lost forever. If we can keep it up and fix it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a valuable
There
resource,
are-
especially in the drought. Well, we're not in it today, but most days we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are treatment options, and I think ultimately that's probably one of the takeaways we'd like you to have is that, I think we've learned enough to know that any real sort of concrete plan that were to come forward would need thorough characterization, and then you can decide what treatment option maybe is appropriate. We did a similar exercise for wildlife. We only looked at terrestrial wildlife, not aquatic wildlife. And the reason for that is the aquatic wildlife is largely regulated by the Water Quality Control Division through their discharge permits. And Nathan Moore with WQCD will be speaking in a minute to those. It's a very similar thing. I guess quickly looking at the same compounds. The water overall looks relatively good, but there are some sample sources that appear to have a few compounds that exceed a recommended threshold. We did not see anything in the literature that indicated the water exceeded for the radium or the benzene I pointed out for these animals, or sometimes it wasn't addressed in the literature. So you're really looking at these inorganic compounds that we talked about.
And the person that you mentioned is with CDPHE. That's one that's going to be making comments as well.
We may or may not be with this though.
Yeah,
I'm going to be really polite about this, but if we can wrap it up in the next 5-7 minutes.
okay, sure. Yep. Irrigation water, real quickly, the sodium and the salinity makes it very difficult to use in its raw form for irrigation, and we don't recommend doing that without treatment. The sodium definitely will cause soil damage.
It raises the sugar content in the product you're raising too.
Dust suppression or use for firefighting, we would look at two main issues with respect to those. One, environmental protection when applying that water to the ground. So ECMC is charged with protecting groundwaters of the state. And so we would want to know, since we know several of these parameters do exceed groundwater standards, we would want to see some characterization of that water that, maybe only waters that comply with the standards are used, or it could be either treated or applied in a way that would not impact the groundwater. We also looked at whether that water is fit for purpose as a dust suppressant. And I just want to share a study that was commissioned by the state of Pennsylvania recently. They're one of the first people that looked actually at produced water for dust suppression. It had never really been studied before. Many of the road application guidelines, prefer mag chloride or calcium chloride, and then sort of say sodium chloride isn't really desirable, but didn't dig into it. And so researchers at Penn State University analyzed brines based on calcium chloride, magnesium chloride, and sodium chloride, and they analyzed samples of produced water. And they found that if you have a higher sodium content and a low total dissolved solids, it actually acts very much like fresh water, or sometimes not even as good as fresh water in dust suppression. And so we evaluated our data set from the Raton, and they plot in that red circle in the top right, out of the options for using as dust suppression, it's actually has the potential to generate the most dust relative to some of the other brines that are traditionally used.
And have they done studies to work with, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
where on the brine studies where once they're dried out and it does emit dust again, are they harmful to breathe?
Yeah, it would depend. That gets to those other compounds that are in, that would be in produced water. And in the Pennsylvania studies, they had higher concentrations than you have here, but they had the same concerns with barium and radium. And they found that those are both treatable by the same method to reduce, but I would hazard to go further than that, in my interpretation of whether or not those are going to become airborne.
Thanks. So I'm sorry, Phil.
Well, I was just going to kind of tag on what you had asked. So if I understand what you said, that the higher levels of sodium could actually produce more dust than your typical mag or chloride.
That is what the initial research conducted by Penn State found.
And then I think you had mentioned because perhaps of what other minerals may be also in that sample, or do you think it's a breakdown of the salt, or I guess I'm asking you to speculate?
Based on how I read their study and did talk to one of the authors a little bit, it's actually the calcium and the magnesium are better ions at finding dust than sodium. So it really is the sodium being predominant that causes the issue in terms of actually generating the dust particles.
Thank you.
So we're pretty close to wrapping up. I think takeaways we want to give you, we've already been through the top two and even the third one. I think getting to our proposed actions, we don't really recommend changes in our rule structure at this time. We have rules on handling produced water disposal. But we also do have a regulatory process to evaluate proposed beneficial reuse plans from the operator. We haven't had this kind of data before for anyone to analyze, to bring a plan forward. And if Nathan Moore has rejoined, he may have something to touch on with the discharge permits.
And can everyone hear me?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. My name is Nathan Moore. I'm the Clean Water Program Manager at the Water Quality Control Division. I recognize that you guys are behind schedule, so I'm just going to be very quick and let you ask questions. The main thing I want to point out is that what this report was really looking at is the reuse of the water and its applicability to the uses that can be conducted without a discharge to a state water. The state already has, and actually it's aligned with federal rules, and so we have to be at least stringent as the federal rules, the process to issue discharge permits into surface waters and a framework that protects those uses of the surface waters. So if you need to discharge water into a creek, a tributary, the Colorado permitting process already takes into account protecting downstream uses, including irrigation, as well as the uses that are inherent to the waterway, such as protecting aquatic life. So by complying with those permit terms and conditions, which could be very site-specific to account for variability within the watershed, there is some allowance for that discharge to occur and then downstream uses. Another advantage of this is it can also take into account for dilutions available before those downstream uses. So for example, many of the agricultural uses by the time it gets to the place where those agricultural users exist, dilution that happens in the stream, and therefore, even though the quality might not be good enough for direct application to a field, it can be good enough to make sure that it's protecting the stream, where the stream can be used for irrigation. Currently, for the most part, they can discharge this water under these permits, but they have to do it intermittently in most cases in order to protect aquatic life that would be harmed with the constant presence of the elevated, some of the elevated pollutants in that water. But with treatment, and they might be able to expand that, or with potential variances, we're currently working with EPRI to look at possibilities to continue to utilize the permit or expand the utilization of the permits that would allow for further downstream uses. So the big take home is this use option still exists, and even though there was some identification that the water might not be able to be directly used in many cases. Any questions about that?
Yeah, well, one of my questions would be, it was briefly touched about the fire mitigation, and I happen to have the fire chief in the room. As we have experience here in San Luis County, like any other county, fires that spring up here and there, and so at the point of fighting a fire, land users are basically saying, you know what, come and use the water because it's accessible and available. What is the process from the firefighter perspective when it comes to fighting a fire? Because they're acting on this split second, and we have our sheriff in the audience as well, and he is the maximum fire authority in the county. When you're putting a fire out, I think the question is, well, we forgot to get a permit here. I just want to make sure that landowners and all of us understand what is the protocol in the process, not only protecting the county, the landowners, but also mitigating fires.
Yeah, so the Clean Water Act and the State Water Quality Control permitting process doesn't really have a specific process to say, okay, emergency, gotta use it, it's logical. It's what that's done is just done because we have processes for reporting essentially when a unpermitted release occurs, and then allowing for kind of just that consideration after the fact, which occurs all the time. I mean, I've heard of essentially helicopters dipping buckets into wastewater lagoons because that was the water available to put out the fire. Essentially, it's just one of those things where you do what you have to do to protect human life and property, and then you rely on the fact that you have a reasonable government to implement that and discuss. So really, I think the big thing is if a firefighter has to use water to put out a fire that maybe is a wastewater, is they should just contact us after the fact and make sure we know, and that way, if it is maybe something that we want to notify well users or downstream water providers that there could be something, which we're usually doing anyway on these large fires, we can make sure they're informed that, hey, there could be something, here. In this case, most of the impacts of this water are more for the long-term contact. Dumping this once onto some irrigation is going to kill the trees like that. It's more like if you irrigate constantly. So it's just one of those things that we just got to rely on the reasonableness of government.
Yes, thank you. Commissioners, any other questions? Anything else? I mean, on behalf of this board and this community, thank you for bringing this information to us.
Thanks for the study too.
Yes, we have copies to that. So, Commissioner Messner, Rick, thank you, Mr. Sanchez, Mr. Moore, thank you for being here today. And if you have any other information, please, at any point in time, we're accessible as well.
One point, one question I would like to ask. Understanding that, like we talked about, the theme of the day for this study was variability, and that there is potential wells that out there that, under current rules, you may have livestock utilizing, and may have the possibility of mortality or fertility or reproductive issues associated with it. And many that wouldn't, right? So understand that as well. That's where the variability is. But under that 2011 exemption, they would still have access to that water. Any recommendations that you may have, we don't have to tell them right now, but on how to just let those landowners know, those ranchers know that there could be some variability in the water, and that there is some tools available to them to look up and and see what the testing that has occurred on those pits has been. And then they can make a determination of whether or not they want to fence the cattle out of that or not. Whether that we come down and have a public meeting, let folks know how to access the information, or whether we, whatever tools would be best available to inform folks on that, we're certainly open to that. Because, well, generally speaking, I think the report or the study found that the water quality, as I think everyone knew, was pretty good in Rats Oak Basin. There are certain situations where there could be problems, and I think it's important to just know that.
Well, and for the ranchers out there, if they've been using this water for very long, they know which ones are okay and which ones aren't by now, by trial and error. I mean, the School of Hard Knocks will weed it out for you pretty quick, and they might have figured out what the problem was. Any new ones that were to come, though, that have been recent, yeah, I mean, really good information for them to have.
And I think that one of the recommendations would be, and Mr. Sanchez would know exactly how to connect with all the ranching community, once the report is final, and those suspicious wells or produced water that could, just reach out to them. And as you mentioned, John, early on, is the possibility of connecting them with the mitigation process, and is there going to be any financial assistance? And I think those are going to be the next steps that I would definitely would like to see.
Sure. Great.
It's not complete, right? It's still a work in progress, correct?
That's right. And, important to understand that, water can be treated to any level.
Yeah.
Just depends on how much money was spent.
Yeah, all versus indeed.
Well, I thank you to the sponsors of this legislation and the work that you all did on the ground. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Take care. All right. We have another presentation today from Santa Fe Trail Ranches Railroad Underpass by Mr. Joe Richards.
Good morning, still morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Board members, good morning. That was just San Isabel on the phone. There's about 800 outages with weather coming out. They're anticipating more as the snow level drops. So I'll keep you posted. They're having a meeting at 2 o'clock. So I figured I'd just put that out there. So you're going to be anticipating some texts from me along through the day. Santa Fe Trail Ranches, I'll just give you a quick update real quick. It's about 16,000 plus acre subdivision, 454 lots, spreading from exit 2 to exit 8. We are currently, I gave you a few more pages this morning, and I apologize to Phil for doing that late, because I've had one of those months where I've been juggling things and some of the balls have been hitting the ground and I've had to pick them up and keep going, so we're usually pretty good at it. If you look at the resiliency wildfire code here, you'll see that little orange dot is my house. So we're in a very, very, very high fire zone to start with. The second little piece of paper I sent you is a map dated, I think, in 1993, to kind of show you that there was an egress under the railroad from Alpine Meadows Drive, which is actually where I live on, under the railroad tracks at way back when. Another interesting footnote is that if you go Google my address, it'll bring it in through exit 2, which would be my home. So there's a lot of prep work we've done to try to show you that this entrance was at one time very, very, very viable. When the ranch was first started, it had 4 entrances, one around exit 8, one at exit 6, one at Morley, and one at exit 2. Since then, through various issues with the POA and the railroad, they've all been eliminated except exit 6. So now we have 16,000 plus acres with just one way in, one way out. and the maneuverability of about 84 miles of roadway to get to and fro, to get on and off the ranch. My background is in construction. I've done a lot of work. I was in Castle Rock, Arapahoe County, helping develop big subdivisions, and at no time were there any less than 2 ways of ingress and egress. The little packet I sent with the presentation this morning was just a picture of County Road 40.2, which just kind of shows you that getting under the tracks isn't just necessarily, it's been done for a long time. The means of ingress and egress are there, and this is actually a county road that goes under that. That's in your exhibit number 1. Number 2 is a little tunnel, we'll call it, for water egress. You see the roadway goes through there. They're used all the time to get in and out of and across and under the railroad tracks. Photo number 3 is the picture of Wooten Ranch, how they're same tunnels as on Santa Fe Trail Ranch. They're basically drainage tunnels and access tunnels on the same structure. And so what's happened is that a exit tube was used for a full-time entrance during the construction of the new bridge at exit 6. For quite some time, that was the only way in and the only way out then. Once that bridge was completed, there seemed to be some disgruntled POA members did not want that to stay open. Some bad information was put out there, and the railroad decided to put some steel boulders. That was the last emphasis there. I actually talked to the foreman there, and they didn't understand why, and I said, well, it's just a legal issue. So what happened was we sued the POA, was sued. That lawsuit was settled. They are now in favor of keeping that open. The problem we have now is that the railroad has said we will not deal with the POA or the Metro District. We have had too many conflicting stories, and there's not a level of trust there. So what that does is bring me to here. I've taken it to my level of expertise and my pay grade and notified all the entities that I can think of. And basically the railroad has told me that they need the Board of County Commissioners to support opening this exit under the tracks. They want an entity they can trust to get this road pushed forward. So that's kind of where we are with that. Prasanna, Commissioner Lopez, you've been out there to take a look at it. It's essential. If this is a convenience thing, it's one thing, but it's a life safety issue on top of it. There should be more than one way on and off this ranch. It worked very fine for a couple of years while we're building the bridge with no issues. All the construction material, all the heavy equipment, all went through this tunnel. The deal we made with the settlement on the lawsuit was basically that there would only be local traffic and emergency vehicles. We have people on the south side of the ranch where this is located. One person whose property this actually butts up to bought it for that reason, because of their health issues, that they can get in and out quickly. My mother-in-law actually fell a few years ago, and the ambulance came through exit 2 to get him. I worked in the Denver area for over 8 years, and that's how I got to back and forth to work. So this is a functioning exit. So with that being said, I figured I'd just open it up and start the conversation.
Yeah, I'm curious. I lived there for 9 years, and I lived at the Wooten Ranch where the toll gate swung. And the only access at that time was the railroad and us, period. And there were 2 blocks on it, and there was no other access. I'm a little confused. I didn't know where this Fisher Peak Parkway was, and I wasn't sure if you were talking about the bridge that down there, you turn at exit 2, you get on the frontage road, you go down about a mile, and then
You're thinking of Morley. They call it their Morley crossing. Around exit mile number 5-ish.
Now, is that the parkway that you...
Well, the railroad closed that. They got in a conflict with the president of the POA, and they they had a crossing there, and they pulled the crossing out and blocked it. It actually has a CDOT designation, and it is not usable. They will not go over the tracks now. That's the big issue we're fighting with the railroad, is they have because of all the issues with accidents, they will not, under any circumstances, go on top of the tracks.
And that kind of gets into my next question. There isn't a county nexus here. Why would put the onus on the county for a private HOA? When we have multiple HOAs all over the county, it goes from CDOT to railroad, or railroad to CDOT from the west. And I was just curious, have you ever considered going out the backside of the property? So off the west side into Longs Canyon and then follow that road?
No access or services. Trinidad Lake Estates, we worked with them to get that. They have actually developed it, and actually it was basically a glorified logging road. So unless you have the right vehicle, you're not going to be able to make it. So
well, for an emergency exit is what I was thinking.
Well, we want this more than emergency. This should be a viable exit. You have over 500 people there. It's not like it was years ago. Even when my wife and I first moved there, there's a lot of people there. There's over 230 homes and more building, and people, kids, using these entrances and exits every day to get on North Ring.
So that exit 2 tunnel that you're talking about, where the pylons are,
Yes.
that was a private road that had Burlington Northern Santa Fe had a lease that was issued to them periodically, that they would use that. Now, you say you used that as a access for a couple of years during. Did you get permission from the landowner?
You got permission from the landowner on the POA side, on the Santa Fe Trail Ranch side. That was negotiated with the board at the time. I had not a clue on how they, if they got.
So the landowner is part of the POA. The landowner that owns the old Wooten Ranch is part of the POA.
The landowner owns the parcel that butts up to that entrance has given permission to use that as a right of way.
Not necessarily the Wooden Ranch. So the Wooden Ranch is the next.
Now, the Wooden Ranch is a whole separate entity. There's no access.
Exit 2, so if you go from exit 2, you go about half a mile maybe.
That's where I live.
Okay.
Right.
And
You turn and you go under the tunnel and it's a half a mile.
But that's private property and they're not.
So you're not talking about using that road?
No.
Oh, okay.
We're coming around the corner, around the bend. If you go out Fisher's Peak Road, you make a left, and that's Alpine Meadows Drive, and that winds all the way around right through the tunnel.
So you're more looking at that area down there where there was a crossing and they removed it for whatever reason.
Yeah, I did that before my time probably, but yeah. But Morley's a good example. I mean, they had an exit over the tracks on it, and because of politics and anger and whatever else is, but the railroad has made no uncertain terms they will not deal with the POA any longer because of issues they came up with, found out were not necessarily so. That's why we have the support letters, as you see, from the Forest Service, the sheriff, and the firefighters, just unanimously supporting opening that up.
so today, you're asking us, as the emergency manager for the San Luis County, that you could actually file that application. Is that what I'm?
I could fill 2 hats. Yeah, I'll change my hat. I was, originally speaking as a landowner there, but as emergency manager, I have the same requirement to bring this to your attention because if something bad happens or worse, and it's not, it's been pointed out, it's really good. I had trouble, like I said, I took it as far as I can take it. The next step has to be permission from the board here to pursue the
And
process.
on that note, and I got a little heartburn with this, you used the county letterhead for this when you sent it to our representatives. So when Jeff Hurd got this, Kathy Garcia called me up and said, "You're in support of this, what's going on?" I didn't know what she was talking about. "Well, it's on your letterhead." And I said, "You're mistaken." And I wasn't mistaken, it was on their letterhead. So that drove some confusion in the beginning.
Yeah, I don't remember being on the letterhead at that time, but I did contact, I was directed from Senator Bennett's office to send it to Congressman Hurd. So I probably just copied and sent it to him to get it going. He wanted everybody visible. Senator Bennett's office, Senator Hickenlooper's office, they're very responsive. I talked to CDOT, but they've been very responsive. I said, well, there's no sense putting a permit out to you if I can't get the tunnel open. So I actually asked the railroad to take the boulders down for now. So if we have to get out, we can, and it's at least an emergency exit at least. But we wanted, he said, well, you want it open full time? I said, absolutely, because we need that ingress and egress.
So are they going to remove those?
They will not until you decide, unless I get a word from you that you will support opening that tunnel.
But one of the caveats before they remove that is to put the onus on us to maintain it then. I don't know if we want that. Did I read that right? Or?
Well, I would think they would want you to support it for sure. How you work out the maintenance of it, I'm sure that we can work
Well,
out.
that would be how you guys work out.
We can work that out financially, and with any improvements to the roadway have to be made, not a problem. They will not deal with the BOA, they don't trust them, so they're not.
So what I saw that day is you're coming in from private property that abuts to federal property that immediately joins state property.
That's correct.
And so I think the clarification that we want to make certain right here is that in no way, shape, or form, the county is going to
Maintain that road.
maintaining that section of the road, if indeed, once we get council to work with us. One of the things, as you and I stood there that very day, I'm looking at it, and that's what I said. Here you have a landowner whose house is just right above there.
Right.
And has some medical implications, totally understood. Coming around, what happens when the landowner sells and that right of way goes away because that's private property? He owns what, 35 acres?
Yes, they
Okay.
actually already talked about leasing, there's actually an abutting property too, and they both agreed to sign
Okay.
it right away.
So-
Historically, that is supposed to already exist in perpetuity.
Right away for
Yeah.
emergency purposes. You know, and I understand now, the firefighters, the sheriff, and all of us are in support of these. I don't think I would ever oppose anything for the life and safety of the whole thing. My only concern in the question is that I don't want to bring any liability to the county and or assuming responsibility for any additional roads. I.e., does CDOT, I would imagine they do snow removal, because being right off the Raton Pass.
No, they don't maintain that really well. When it was active, we did it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted the clarification and the understanding, going back to Commissioner Tony Hass's point, is that I don't think we would ever oppose anything. I personally would not. I'm not speaking on behalf of the board, but the thing is, what is the liability and responsibility for the county, which is going to be where I need a little mind to kind of walk us through the process.
Yeah, well, I think we should check that out because they're not going to accept it from the POA or the Metro District. During the lawsuit, before the lawsuit was settled, they tried to get it open with a backdoor permit. It was rejected, and I got an earful about that. It's, why didn't you guys sell this? We tried. They found out that all the information they were fed was less than accurate, let's put it that way.
And this was the next, when Kathy Garcia, who is the representative for, Representative Hurd, actually sent this email, hey, what is your position on this? Quite honestly, I have no idea what she was talking about, but nonetheless, because we have heard, no pun intended there, I guess, Representative Hurd actually, I think, from my perspective, he needs to get behind this. That's his district. That's a federal, as you and I said that day, that's a federal issue. A letter from Bennett, Hickenlooper, and support, if you will, locally, but a letter from them can go 10 times faster and further.
It helps, but who applies for the permit is the problem.
Yeah, yeah.
And they want a government entity to apply for that.
That's the discussion that we're going to have.
Okay.
I don't want to get into something over assisting the subdivision, which includes maintenance, because I think you're going to set precedents. I mean, we have 100 and some subdivisions.
Yeah, but this is an existing.
I don't want to be answering. I don't think we should have to be answering for the 100 and some subdivision of minor. Why'd you do this for them when you're not doing it for us?
Well, this is an existing exit. This isn't something new or we're trying to create. This has already been there for 100+ years, and now all of a sudden we can't use it. So, somebody has to stand up and say, you need to do it. Because if there's a fire and somebody gets hurt or worse, and I pointed this out, it's not gonna be pretty for everybody. That's the problem. When I was a building official, same thing. I never went looking for people with violations, but if a violation came to me, I had to deal with it, whether it set a precedent or not. It had to be dealt with, and that's just like vacating a road. You know, everybody has a right to try. You know, and just because you vacate one doesn't mean you're going to vacate them all. So that's where I am. And there's no other exits off this, Commissioner. If there was more exits off, we would have a different conversation.
Thank you. So the chair recognizes Mr. Rojan.
When you mentioned that you need the board to support, define support for a permit, for maintenance,
Well,
and a veiled threat now that since you mentioned that if there's a wildfire, you already mentioned it on the powers to be, and Commissioner Haas has a really good point, develop it going west if we can't get out the.
there's nowhere to go west. It's miles.
What is define support first? Let me ask you.
Yeah,
What is support?
Well, the railroad wants the Board of County Commissioners to apply for the permit
Okay, what permit?
to open the railroad.
So there's a permitting process that BNSF has that we, Los Animas County, wants Burlington Northern to open this underpass.
Yes, yes. And then the maintenance and stuff we could work out as a private issue with the POA, but they want somebody responsible that's going to say, you know, we're going to open it correctly.
And as Commissioner Lopez mentioned, an MOU or whatever between the county and the development. One is if the POA doesn't do what they said that they would do, then what kind of recourse? And number two, like Commissioner Lucero mentioned, why specifically your BOA or your development? And I understand you're saying that because the issue's been there forever. We've got developments out north who want us to go in there and maintain, who want the road bridge department to go in there and maintain their roads because they only have access in and out in certain areas.
If you're talking about,
And we're opening up, as Commissioner Lucero too said, also in my opinion, we're opening up Pandora's box. If road and bridges start to maintain anything, or even agreements with the county for POAs to do this stuff, I'm just afraid of opening up Pandora's box and liability issues.
we're talking about hundreds of people, though. We're not talking about a couple of ranchers out east somewhere.
No, there's hundreds of people on Bear Springs.
You're well aware.
Longhorn Ranch 1
Yeah.
and 2.
Yeah.
You're well aware of it because you were the one that brought it to our attention. That
Yes,
there's
sir.
a lady and her 2 kids out there abandoned in a pickup. We needed to drop everything we were doing. Road and bridge needed to drop everything we were doing and go that direction.
You know, Mr. Richards, I think the points here are going to be really good discussion for us. Here's one thing. I would have to have an MOU from, including CDOT, that they would take full responsibility that that is their road and not county road. B, it would have to clearly state that the BOA would take full responsibility for the maintenance and upkeep of all that. That would be something that becomes almost an IGA, intergovernmental agreement between CDOT and the county, because at this point in time, I don't think we are opposed. I personally am not opposed to supporting the opening of that. I mean, I saw it as blocked.
Sure.
You have one exit, unless you build any other entrances with private funds, it's not going to happen. But the liability is big on me, and also the financial, could be financial responsibility. So we have a lot of communication, a lot of questions that we need to go through.
Okay.
But definitely, anything else, sir, and thank you for bringing this to us.
The other thing I would like to add is I'm still confused on whether or not the rancher that owns the old Wooten Ranch right there is on board. So he lives on just the south side, and he owns about 1,000 acres there. And it looks like you guys, by this map, just butt right up against what we used to call the old bull pasture. And then his ranch continues almost all the way to Raton, down Smith Canyon and Coal Canyon. And Coal Canyon connects to Long's Canyon. It would only be like a mile and a half, 2 miles off that ridge, and you could tie in to Long's Canyon, but I don't know.
All right, tell somebody who's 75 years old who's saying, okay, go take that road and go find it. It's not practical. you're setting people in front. We had a deal, my wife made a deal with Romero Ranch to try to have access. They're basically glorified logging roads. And with smoke and all the other things going on, you're sending people into the wilderness to say, just head that way and you'll make it. It's not that simple. This is a stone's throw away from the freeway, and it will save lives. And like I said, if you put your GPS in my address, it'll take you to the exit 2. So it's been modified somewhere, somehow. So again, it's really urgent. And I understand it's not your fault that the POA pissed off the railroad. I got it. It's not my fault either that they pissed off the railroad. But they made it on no certain terms unless the county helps support this entrance and keeps an eye on it. They're not going to let anybody else apply for a permit. So it's a life safety issue. We're one lightning strike away from something happening. So I just need to bring it to your attention and urgently ask you to consider it and let me know what I can do further. I'm at my limit as your emergency manager. I will not want to overstep, so that's why we're here right now, because I'm at that point where it's beyond my paycheck, and I will not obligate the county or cause you embarrassment in any way. That's not my intention. I know you guys know me better than that. So, but I would ask you to consider it and then let me know how to handle it. To go from there.
We sort of do. I thank Mr. Richards.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
You bet. Have a great day. We're going to go now to, we're going to move down to section 9, consideration, new business, consideration of public. Oh, yes. Thank you, sir. Let me, I got ahead of myself. Public comment. Do we have anyone sign up for public comment? Mr. Rogan, you wait for your hand?
No, I've spoken up today. I'm not going to speak anymore.
Do we have anyone online that wishes to take this time and space to address the Board of County Commissioners? Chief, was that you? No, sir. Okay, 3 minutes. Thank you, Commissioner Haas, for bringing that up. Hearing none, we're going to move now to section 9, consideration of public trustee first quarter report. I don't know if we have a public trustee online, but pretty much self-explanatory there, Commissioners. Ms. Leonetti, are you online? Commissioners, any questions? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve this report.
I move to approve the public trustee first quarter report.
Second motion.
Commissioner Hess?
Yes.
Commissioner Searle?
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez?
Yes. Thank you, sir. Mr. Drummond, we're going to have some reading coming up. Consideration of resolution 25-021, MF 2025-001, B&L Enterprises, Inc., for Pinyon Canyon Helium Plant. Please read the resolution.
Resolution of the Board of County Commissioners making findings and rendering determination on major facilities permit application 2025-001 filed by B&L Enterprise Inc. for Pinyon Canyon Heating by resolution 25-021. Whereas B&L Enterprise Inc. for Pinyon Canyon Heating Plant has filed application MF 2025-001 under the rules and procedures of Los Angeles County Oil and Gas Regulations. The proposed major facility will be located on Lot 6, Section 31, Township 30 South, and 54 West of the 6th PM. Directly off County Road 179, this plant will be used to process helium and CO2. And whereas the San Luis County Planning Commission reviewed the application on March 10th, 2025, and it has been recommended for approval. And whereas the Board of County Commissioners convened a public hearing on April 15, 2025, at which time said application was publicly heard, and testimony was taken from all interested parties, including representatives of B&L Enterprises, Inc. And whereas the Board of County Commissioners has taken into consideration the application and all supporting information submitted by the applicant, the recommendations of the Los Angeles County Planning Commission, and public comments made during the public hearing for the application, now therefore be resolved by the Board of County Commissioners of Los Angeles County, Colorado, that 1, Findings, the Board of County Commissioners hereby makes the following findings in this consideration of application MF 2025-001 by BMO Enterprise, Inc. for Pinyon Canyon Helium Plant seeking approval for helium and CO2 processing facility. 9.01.09 major facilities review criteria. Need that B&L Enterprise, Inc. for Pinyon Canyon Helium Plant has sufficiently demonstrated a need for the heating processing facility in the location proposed, as evidenced by the information supporting the application. Suitability that B&L Enterprise, Inc. for Pinyon Canyon Helium Plant has sufficiently provided and sufficiently proven the suitability of the proposed location and operation of the heating processing facility as evidenced by the information supporting the application. As the adequacy of existing roads and access to the site that B&L Enterprise, Inc. for Pinyon Canyon Helium Plant has sufficiently demonstrated the adequacy of the access roads to the site proposed for the heating processing facility as evidenced by the information supporting the application, agrees to approve and adhere to Los Animas County Road Use Agreement. Compatibility that B&L Enterprise, Inc. for Pinyon Canyon Helium Plant has sufficiently demonstrated the proposed heating processing facility is compatible with surrounding land uses as evidenced by the information supporting the application. 2, the Board of County Commissioners does hereby approve application MF 2025-001 by B&L Enterprise, Inc. for Pinyon Canyon Helium Plant for helium and CO2 processing facility to serve existing and future helium gas wells, which were or will be permitted and approved by ECMC and is located on Lot 6, Section 31, Township 30 South, Range 54 West, 6 p.m., directly off County Road 179. Upon motion made and seconded, affirmative vote, this resolution is adopted this 6th day of May 2025 by order of the Board of County Commissioners, Los Angeles County, Colorado, followed by your signature notice.
Thank you, sir. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve resolution 25021, MF 2025-001, B&L Enterprise, Inc. for Pinyon Canyon Helium Plant.
Second?
Commissioner Searle?
Yes.
Commissioner Hess?
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez?
Yes, thank you. Consideration of Energy Impact Assistance Fund Grant 25074 in the amount of $1 million for improvements to County Road 13.0 and 39.9. Mr. Dorncott.
Commissioner, before you for your consideration is the grant agreement with the Colorado Department of Local Affairs for asphalt paving on county roads 13.0 and 31.9. The grant award was $1 million, the road bridge contribution was $1 million plus $50,000 in kind. So I ask the board to approve this agreement.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, any questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the Energy Impact Assistance Fund Grant 25-074 in the amount of $1 million for improvement to County Road 13.0 and 31.9.
Second motion.
Commissioner Hess?
Yes.
Commissioner Searle?
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez?
Yes. 90, consideration of Department of Defense Community Infrastructure Program grant funding letter of support request for Harry Stokes. Back to you, sir.
Commissioner, before you for your consideration is Los Angeles County Perry Stokes Department of Defense Community Infrastructure Grant, Program Grant, funding letter of support. The total pursuit of these funds is $3.2 million, $1.9 million for 120 by 90 foot hangar facility, and then a dedicated multi-port pot filling facilities for $1.3 million. Those improvements will be out at the Perry Stokes Airport to deconflict, to be the terminology it is, fixed wing and rotary wing, and then also to have a hangar out there that during storm events, the military, if they're doing maneuvers, will have a place to house their helicopters. And then whenever they're not being housed, that hangar then will be open for fixed wing operators' use, and also other folks coming in their use. And our fixed base operator is online. I don't know if he has any other words he wants to add to my comments.
Nothing to add, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Evan. So I ask the board to approve this letter.
Commissioners, any questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I have one question, Otto. Evan, on this hangar, will we be collecting any revenue from that, or will you be on this hangar when the military uses it?
The grant itself, once it's offered, will stipulate the language about what we're allowed to charge. My assumption is that when the military uses it, they'll demand one preferential use or first right of refusal, and then on top of it, since they paid for the hangar, my guess is they'll say that we can't charge them.
I got you. Thank you.
They're building us a house.
We will hopefully sell fuel to them.
Yes, we'll do some,
I'll bring a box of donuts.
any additional questions, commissioners? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the Department of Defense Community Infrastructure Program Grant Funding Letter of Support request for Perry Stokes Airport. Thanks, Evan.
The second?
Commissioner Searle?
Yes.
Commissioner Hess?
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez?
Yes, thank you, sir. 90, consideration of Perry Stokes Airport Task Order Number 1. Mr. Duncan.
Commissioner, before you for consideration is Perry Stokes Airport Task Order Number 1. This is for the seating of the taxiways and I believe the runway. I could be mistaken there, but the board approved this task order prior to the approving of the master agreement with our consultants, Bolton and Mink. The master agreement referenced dates that didn't line up with the original task order, this task order now. The dates referenced in the master agreement line up with this task order, and our consultant wanted to have a, in my terms, cleaner task order number 1, even though some of the dates are still post-dated. So they sent this to us and asked the board to reconsider task order 1.
So, Mr. Duncan, on the request is $96,000. The estimated federal share is $91,000. Does that mean the county is picking up the difference?
CDOT actually has an action list.
Very good.
The county has a local share as well.
Very good. I like those ones. Keep bringing them to us. Commissioners, any additional questions? Thank you, Finance Director. I really appreciate that. Hearing no other questions, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the Perry Stokes Airport Task Order Number 1.
Second motion.
Commissioner Hess?
Yes.
Commissioner Searle?
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez?
Yes, thank you. 9F, consideration of Las Animas County and United Miner Workers Association contract. Council, Finance Director, Mr. Duncan, one of you.
Commissioners, we met with the UNWA within the last few months, staff and myself, discussed changes within the contract that they like to see, that we like to see, and I believe what's in front of you is the final version.
I don't have opportunity to read it, but council, do you have any say again? Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that. Commissioners? No questions? I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve Los Animas County United Mine Workers Association contract.
The second?
Commissioner Searle?
Yes.
Commissioner Hess?
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez?
Yes, thank
And
you, sir.
just a side note, there'll be 2 copies to be signed by the board. The UNWA prefers the original copies.
Very good. 9G, consideration of IFB 25C004 courthouse park tree removal. Mr. Duncan.
We solicited bids for removing 3 trees here in the park south of the courthouse. With 1 respondent, but the respondent has yet to give me the work comp or insurance commissioner, so I asked the board to reject the bid.
I had a question on that. Is Is it something, removing of the trees at the maintenance, or do they would do that?
There's concern using our existing bucket truck, to take those trees down, Commissioner, but we may not have a choice now. And then to get a stump grinder and take it a foot or so below surface.
Yeah, and thank you for noting that, Mr. Dorncamp. That was going to be my question on the liability insurance and coverages. So what happens in the event that they provide those? Are you going to reopen, repost the bid?
If the board rejects it, we would have to.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so right now, if there are no questions, I would entertain a motion to reject this item.
I move to reject IFB 25-0C004 courthouse park tree removal.
Second motion.
Commissioner Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Searle?
Yes.
Mr. Lopez?
Yes. 9H, consideration of Marble Water Users Association Community Development Block Grant Agreement that includes a memorandum of understanding and exhibits 1B, 1C, 1D, 1F, and 2F. Mr. Dorncamp.
We can, for your consideration, Commissioners, is exactly what Commissioner Lopez said, a whole gamut of USDA and MOUs. And thank you, Attorney Nelson, for going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth for around 3, 4, 5 months out on this plan. She's put in a lot of work.
And I appreciate that because this kind of woke me up early this morning. I had a question for her already. So, Council, any questions, concerns that you may have, ma'am?
No, I think this final version,
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions on this particular item?
I guess I have a question. We're just a pass-through for this. Christie, do you have to do paperwork? Does the county get some kind of compensation for
I
it?
don't believe there is any administrative set aside for this commission.
We actually spoke that from the very beginning. It is an in-kind to the community. One of the things, though, the recommendation was to have them bring basically the paperwork for Finance Director Coverty to do the data entry. That's kind of, they're going to gather all the data, if I'm understanding correctly, Christie. They're going to bring all this stuff to you for entering into the system.
and then obviously I request the funds
Yes.
from
You will-
USDA.
you will downstairs.
Is this federal money correct?
It is USDA and all my use for
Yes. But there is no, outside of that, no compensation and or per se liability to the county. And that was the only way that they could apply for the grants through government agencies.
Well, I just ask because I know it's a lot of work
It is.
in Christie's.
Any additional questions? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve the Model Water Users Association Community Development Block Grant Agreement that includes a memorandum of understanding and exhibits, is that one, I guess, 1B, 1C, 1D, 1F, and 2F.
A second?
Commissioner Searle?
Yes.
Commissioner Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Lopez?
Yes. 9I, consideration of milling amendment number 2, courthouse cloth wiring replacement. Mr. Dorncamp.
Commissioner, for your consideration is milling amendment number 2, courthouse cloth wiring replacement. We had discussions with this with Milling, who's our current design build company for the HVAC system. And during their HVAC system upgrades, noticed the cloth wiring. Back through a prior consultant's stamped plans. At that time, they were supposed to have replaced that wiring by the plans. And so this is the replacing of that cloth wiring. And so they brought their attention that they used ground, they for routing purpose, they use an existing conduit back in the day. And it could be concerned with the ground, which they could, if there was a failure, it could possibly not trip a breaker with a breaker box and potentially cause inflammation. Thank you.
Mr. Doran, for public record, what is the cost of this project?
$360,882. That is $106,000 worth. Let me scroll down to the correct location. $106,000 and some change is set aside basically for, there's $106,316 set aside for new conduit allowance. When the company's going to be doing it, I believe Simons Electric came down and did a spot check of the cloth wiring and what they estimated was contained in this courthouse. They obviously couldn't get up in the roof and everywhere else to make sure all the conduit was in place. And they could pull the old wire out and the new wire through that existing conduit. So if they run into conduit that they can't pull the wire out or pull the new wiring through, they'll have to go in and make those conduit adjustments, and that's what will be used on this. And plus, this does not include any hazardous materials they may run into in the process of changing out any of the conduit and or pulling that wire. If they can use the existing conduit, should let any kind of hazardous materials.
Thank you. And then one question for Finance Director. The funds have been appropriated. We'll find the money.
Yes, I'll have your discussions. We get budget for this, but I think in capital expenditure, we might have to maybe not do some projects that we have in order to pay for this. Because we had this discussion before, so we'll have to probably stop a couple of projects to pay for this.
Thank you.
Because this is important.
It is very important. It's, yes.
Were we supposed to be, wasn't there another company?
When I emailed the company, when we got the final numbers, the final estimated costs, I emailed the company probably a week and a half ago, and they responded back, gave them a couple of weeks. So yes, we're seeking the full amount for reimbursement from the company that was supposed to have done it originally.
I read body language now, so. And speaking of language, Council, you've had the opportunity to read this agreement. Do you have any concerns with it?
This is the version that includes that little piece that you put in, correct, on the change orders?
Yes, it does contain the change order language.
And have they approved that, or we're going to approve today and hope that they approve that?
They sent it back
With that in there.
where under A3151, which on your red numbers for your page numbers is 322. Down at the very bottom, point 1, all such change orders must be approved by the appropriate approval authority of the owner in order to size the change order numbers before design, builder may proceed with corresponding.
And they sent that back, they didn't
They
have
sent
to.
that back to us.
Didn't know.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Commissioners, any additional questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the billing amendment number 2, courthouse cloth wiring replacement.
Second the motion.
Commissioner Hess?
Yeah.
Commissioner Sir?
Yes.
Commissioner
Yes. Boy, what an agenda. Consideration of ISP 2025-F02 unleaded fuel bid. Wrong count.
For your commissioners, for your consideration is IAB 2025-02 unleaded fuel bid to be delivered on our road and bridge department. The following results: approximately 8,000 gallons of unleaded fuel. World Fuel Services $2.2090 per gallon, extended price $17,672. And Corporate Petroleum $2.4366 per gallon, extended price $19,492.80. Valley, $2.42 per gallon standard price, $19,520, and Lost Oil no bid. I ask the board to approve World Fuel Services bid of $2.2090 per gallon standard price, $17,672.
Thank you, sir. Any questions on these commissioners? I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the IFB 2025-02 unleaded fuel program of World Fuel for 8,000 gallons of fuel at 2.209 for a total of $17,672.
Second.
Mr. Searle?
Yes.
Mr. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Lopez?
Yes. 9L, consideration of IGA with Castilla County regarding housing of Castilla County inmates at the Los Animas County Detention Center. Good morning, Sheriff. No, good afternoon. Oh, did we skip K? Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, consideration of JBBS contract amendment number 6. That's you anyhow.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, how are you?
Doing well. So this is the contract that we get from the state that helps fund our medicated assisted treatment program for the detention center. We've been getting this for several years, but it requires us to get it approved and signed. I believe we're getting more funding this year than we have in the past, so that'll help our program out, which we're mandated to run.
So, taking one step ahead, if and when you get into the agreement with Castilla County, will you see additional services needed to provide this, the JBBS for the
Yes,
population?
that was part of the plan
Okay.
that I had talked with the JBBS representatives. I had informed them at some point we may be taking on some more counties inmates, and so they decided to put that increase within that next contract because of that possibility.
Thank you. And once upon a time, there was conversation about the JBBS funds completely being minimized. Have you seen any impact?
I haven't saw any change, and actually we're getting an increase, so for now, it seems to be very steady. And the funding is still there because of the legislation that requires us to have these programs.
Thank you. Council, my question to you, you have read and reviewed this.
Correct, no legal concerns.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that. Commissioners, any questions? Hearing no questions, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the JBBS contract amendment number 6.
Second motion.
Commissioner Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Searle?
Yes.
Mr. Lopez?
Yes. Thank you, Sheriff, and wish you the best on that. Consideration now of the IGA in Castilla County regarding housing of Castilla County inmates at the Los Animas County Detention Center. Back to you, Sheriff.
So a couple of years ago, I talked with Sheriff Sanchez from Castilla County. His jail has closed because of the restrictions and requirements in his area. So he had inquired back then about us possibly housing inmates and them paying us for their services. We weren't able to do it at that time. The resources just weren't there. We were short on staff and some things needed to be repaired in the jail. He since went to, I believe, La Plata, or no, what was it, Archuleta County, and they have been housing their inmates recently while they're still doing it now. He did ask again because of the distance, traveling time for his officers to have to go all the way to bring people to court. So I revisited the issue of us expanding our area to take that in, and I believe now we have the resources to get that completed. And I think he houses maybe 10 to 12, so it's not going to put a big strain on our staff. At some point, I didn't think we could take it, but now we're fairly up on staff. I think only one short in detention, and we did get some items fixed. So I don't see an issue. Plus it'll bring in some revenue for the county from Castilla.
Sheriff, one of the points that I read in this particular agreement, there is the $65 a day, and then my question, of course, you have spoken to this. This is not a, if you will, a money-making agreement, but definitely, I would imagine that covers your
Yes, it'll
expenditures.
help with the additional expenses of additional inmates that we have in the facility.
One of the also points on this particular agreement is that the transportation for these inmates will be the responsibility of Castilla County.
Correct.
And in the event that your department is asked to do that, there's going to be a billing opportunity for your county to do so.
Yes, there could be, if they are unable to respond to pick up inmates, they may be able to ask if we'd be able to charge an additional fee for having them travel. But that should be, if in the event that happens, but that normally doesn't occur too often unless an emergency arises.
Commissioners?
If this requires another FTE, we'll be making enough off of it to cover another FTE.
I am not sure if it could possibly bring in enough revenue to offset some staffing.
And I'm looking at this, and I know our council's went over this really close, but it's pretty specific on who's in this contract. Doesn't talk about a Los Animas County Sheriff or a Castilla County Sheriff as much as it does Danny Sanchez. And if, for instance, Sheriff Sanchez doesn't get reelected, this will still be in effect, correct?
I believe they'd have to go in front of their board, but I don't see, their board was fairly positive about it, according to him in my talks with him.
Under the general provision 16B, this agreement shall be binding upon the successors and sons of the parties who
Okay.
adhere. So it stays in effect. There are provisions in there to terminate it, I think 30 days notice.
Yes.
So that's always an option, which we prefer on our end as well. But it will stay in effect even if your sheriff's change.
And I was happy to see that you can terminate this at any
Yes.
time.
Yeah, if it's not working to our satisfaction, we can terminate it. It's a 30-day.
And on that point as well, you know, Council, the point I read, I have highlighted 16C, under this agreement, the expenditure of public funds is contingent upon continued availability and appropriations by both parties. So that really reads well. Council, I know Commissioner Haas kind of asked the question and you gave us a nod. You read the agreement. Do you have any concerns, questions?
I don't have legal concerns, and I will point out, based on your question earlier, Commissioner, this follows the same signing polymer path as our logo.
Thank you for the clarification. Sheriff, any additional comments?
Other than, I believe their board in Castilla County is reviewing this contract today as well, so as soon as I hear from them, I'll let.
And this should be effected upon signature?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioners, any other questions for Sheriff Navarrete? By the way, thank you for your patience, sir. I know we've gone a little bit over time, but really appreciate your patience there. Thank you. Hearing no questions, I will entertain a motion.
To approve the IGA with Castilla County regarding housing of Castilla County inmates at the Los Angeles County Detention Center.
Second?
Commissioner Searle?
Yes.
Commissioner House?
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez?
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you. Yes. 9M, consideration of 25 TAD-01 SDGA resolution. Mr. Drawing-Cat.
Commissioner, before you for your consideration is 25 TAD-01, the resolution with the Colorado Division of Aeronautics, discretionary aviation grant resolution.
Commissioners, any question on this particular item?
Commissioner, this would be for the seating taxiway, will be the runway also.
the one that you mentioned earlier.
This is a really question about the state development funding, and it has a breakdown of it.
Yes.
I think this is 90%, sending us 100,000.
There he is.
We're loading Christie Coverly's plate with another project director.
I've always been in charge of this in the state always done that.
She loves this stuff. I know she does. That's what makes an accountant go around, right? Commissioners, here is our other conversation. I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve 25-TAD-01 SDGA resolution.
Second motion.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Searle,
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez.
Yes. Consideration of an agreement between the Spanish Peaks Outdoor Coalition, parentheses, SPOC, and the South Central Council of Governments authorizing SCOG to act as the fiscal agent for SPOC's second Colorado Parks and Wildlife Regional Outdoor Grant Cycle. And this is basically asking Mr. Dorian to be the authorized signator on this agreement. Mr. Dorian.
Commissioners, you alluded to, this is for the second round of Colorado Parks and Wildlife Regional, Commissioner Hess, help me if you can, Regional Partnership Initiative that we applied for a grant, I think it is probably 2 years ago, we were successful in receiving round one, now this is round two. The COG will be the fiscal agent, and I'd ask the board to go ahead and sign on behalf of the board this memorandum of understanding.
Thank you, sir. And this agreement, council, do you have any concerns with it?
No legal concerns, Commissioner.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that. Commissioners, no other questions? I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve the agreement between Spanish Peaks Outdoor Coalition and the South Central COG, authorizing the South Central COG to act as the fiscal agent for SPOC's second Colorado Parks and Wildlife Regional Outdoor Grant Cycle.
Second.
Commissioner Searle,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez.
Yes, thank you. And now we come to the fun part, financial matters. Consideration of payroll and bills for the second half of April 2025. Finance Director Corbin.
We have payroll as of April 30th, 2025 of $227,669.45. Do you have any questions on the payroll? Invoices paid. Invoices paid on April 16th, 2025, in the amount of $134,759.92. And I checked it twice, Mr. Hass, just to make sure, but I saw nothing else. I wanted to bring to your attention, unless you have a question.
Thank you for that. And commissioners, if there are no other questions for Finance Director Corbin, I will entertain the motion.
I move to approve the payroll and bills for the second half of April 2025.
Second motion.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Searle,
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez.
Yes. That brings us to section 11, executive session. The board will meet under CRS 246424 for being confirmed with the county attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions. Item A, Second Amendment. B, grant writer, security. C, airport handlers. D, TAD. E, nuisance ordinance. Commissioners, I will entertain a motion to suspend the Board of County Commissioners and enter into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Searle,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez.
Yes.